Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Kat and this is Katadactyl, and today I have a very big May wrap-up part 2 to get to. So let's talk a bit about numbers. So in May I actually read 18 books, which I think is really good. The first 7 books I did in my May wrap-up part 1. I will leave it linked down below, and I read some great books during that time, so definitely check it out. So this month we're going to be talking about 11 books, 2 of which are DNFs, so I'm gonna just go ahead and get right on into it. So the first book I DNF'd this month was Freshwater by Akwaeke Emezi, and this was a book that I was really anticipating reading because we follow a girl who is inhabited by multiple spirits that kind of coexist along her own identity. The concept was very cool, but the execution was really scattered in my opinion. It's flow of consciousness and it's very confusing, and I found it so hard to get into. So hard to get into, in fact, that I just didn't want to read it anymore. So for me, it is not a book that I will be picking up again. I don't really recommend it unless you really love flow of consciousness, then it may work for you. So let's go ahead and talk about the second book I DNF'd. And I think it may come as a bit of a surprise because I know a lot of people loved it and said I would love it, but it's The Elegance of the Hedgehog by Muriel Barbery. I understand that the tone of this book is really trying to be sophisticated, and she pulls in a lot of philosophical and literary references, and some of them I get, some of them I don't get, some of them I don't care that I don't get, but sometimes books have a way of pulling me in even if I think the writing is pretentious. So in this book we follow 2 main characters. One is an older woman who would actually maybe think this way and know about those types of things, but the other one is a 12-year-old or 13-year-old girl, and there's just no way that she would think that way or act that way. I didn't like it, and I did read quite a bit of it. I read over 100 pages, so I feel like I did give it a really good go. I just was finding myself annoyed by how the characters were talking, more so than being intrigued by what is going on. So if I'm making a huge mistake and this is your favorite book of all time, please let me know, and maybe I might give it another go. Usually I like to give books 2 chances, but I was just so annoyed by this book that at the moment I don't have the intention to do so. And the next book I'd like to talk about is Switch On Imagination Now. This one I'm actually not going to rate because it's impossible to rate it. It's a combination of images and poetry and statistics that argue against nuclear arms. And I found this collection extremely moving, and I really do recommend it if you're looking for something unique. This isn't on Goodreads, and I will leave the links down below to where you can possibly buy a copy. I think it would be a great discussion book for any type of students or even a book club. It would be amazing. There's a lot to dissect here. So one of my favorite pages is one of the more simple ones. For instance, this is how it looks. And the poetry says, "A thing to slaughter people. What did we want to protect so much that we created you?" And the "you" in all caps is how they refer to nuclear arms throughout the novel. And it is really moving. So there's another one here. "How many coins are melted? How many bills are burned? With them we could save many more children who could eat and grow." There's always an image, and it's paired with the English translation and the Japanese. So this is just an amazing booklet, and I'm so glad that I found it at a thrift store of all places. So I will leave the links down below. Check it out if you're interested in translated works or nuclear arms or Japan's response to nuclear weapons. I think this is a very important work and a really good one, so I highly recommend it. Alrighty, and the next 2 books I want to talk about both get 3 stars, and I read them during Scallywagathon. So the first one is Peter Pan by J.M. Barrie, and I was actually surprised by Peter Pan because Peter is kind of a dick, and he's way more brutal than I think I was thinking he would be. So often he neglects the children and Wendy, and he doesn't seem to care about the danger that is inherent in the world, and he's kind of laissez-faire about the whole thing, and he's kind of hands-off. And when they have concerns or they're hungry or they're scared, he makes fun of the other children and he kind of bullies them. But if you think about it, it's kind of Lord of the Flies-like, where of course Peter would be the strong one, the braggy one, the cocky one. He is the leader of the boys. If he was a gentler nature, he would be more like the other boys that we see who follow Peter. So I'm glad that I finally read it. I can say I read it. I did not so highly enjoy it that I will be keeping it. I think I like a lot of retellings more than I like the original, which is a weird feeling to have. So I give it 3 stars. I think you should read it just to say that you know the original text, but I do recommend retellings more. Alrighty, and also for Scallywagathon, I read redRobe by Jon Courtenay Grimwood. This is a hot mess of a book that I just kind of couldn't put down. So just the writing is all over the place. The plot is very nonsensical. We follow a few main characters. There is a priest who has stole a lot of money from the Vatican, missing billions of dollars. There is a Japanese prostitute who is kidnapped and taken to an off-world colony called Samsara. And there is an ex-assassin named Axel who may or may not be the love child of someone very important, and he has his eyes replaced, and there's a bunch of tech in this world that is super crazy awesome, like spiders that can regenerate skin and muscle and blood, and there's tech that replaces parts of your mind and different eye ports you can get. The tech in this world was awesome. It's very new, weird. I think that if the plot had been better executed, I think this would be really highly rated for me because the ideas were stellar. They were totally there. However, it was very messy and the end was kind of like unresolved. I didn't really know what that ending was. So overall, I give it 3 stars. I'm glad I read it and at least gave it a chance. If you like new weird, then this might be for you. It's a book where it's kind of, all the ideas are so shiny that I kind of let the plot go by the wayside, as I think the author did, because the ideas are just so awesome that I'm reading it purely for the imagination. So next is a random book that I picked up because I thought it might be funny and it was just sitting on my TBR shelf. Let's Explore Diabetes with Owls by David Sedaris. These are essays and also short stories, and a lot of the shorter stories are poking fun at conservative people in America or ignorant people in America or racist people in America, and I found those stories very funny. But a lot of David Sedaris' writing is poking fun at himself or his family or people that he runs into. Some of the stories I really gelled with and I found them so spot on. Particularly, for example, a chapter where he talks about the differences between traveling in Japan and China and how disparate they are. And that was how I recently felt when I got stuck in a Chinese airport, and it was just brutal. And so some chapters really gelled with me, and other chapters I was a bit bored and I wanted to skip them, but I did not. So overall I give it 3 stars. I don't think David Sedaris is necessarily for me. I find other writers funnier than he is, but if you really like David Sedaris, then this might be one to pick up. So the next book is one of my most anticipated reads, and I picked it up a while ago but haven't gotten around to it. It's Sal by Mick Kitson. There are triggers for sexual abuse and mental abuse and parental neglect, drug use, and alcoholism. And in this book, Sal has been researching for over a year how to survive in the wild, where she is going to take her younger sister and go into the wild and survive there, outside of kind of society's reach. So this one I picked up because it sounded vaguely like my absolute darling. I really did like it, and it was a quick read. I read it on the night bus from Osaka to Hiroshima. I give it 3.5 stars overall though, because I feel like the plot was pretty weak and relied on instances of convenience to keep the characters and their situation going. So I don't know exactly how realistic it is, and I think that broke a bit of the plot continuity for me. Alright, and next up we're getting to the 4-star books. So it's Amatka by Karin Tidbeck. She is a Swedish writer, but she wrote this in English, and she just seems like the coolest person ever. Like, when I went to her website, she just seems like really awesome. So I'm gonna leave her website down below and you'll see what I mean. In this book we follow Vanja, who is a person who has recently come to the colony of Acer, where language shapes things. So you have to constantly label and name items, otherwise they basically decompose into goop, which is very dangerous, and the government has to come and collect the goop, and it's really, really dangerous. So you have to make sure to give everything its proper name and speak the truth of each item. So as she is spending time in Acer, which is a very cold and wintry colony, she realizes that perhaps everything isn't as it appears to be, and this book is definitely in the new weird genre. I think it was so fascinating, I couldn't put it down. I didn't know what was gonna happen, and I just felt blown away by such an original concept for a book. So if you're looking for something that is a definite dystopian, deals with language, and is also kind of in the new weird genre where it's really hard to categorize, but it is totally awesome and you're along for the stellar ride, then I would really recommend this book to you. And it's not that long. I think I read it in one sitting on the bus to USJ. So I highly recommend this book, and I wish I had a physical copy. I think I'll be getting one in the future because it definitely is the forerunner of my new weird favorites. Alrighty, and next up is another 4-star read. It is Inca Pi Alice Broadway. This one is so cool as well. I feel like I read a lot of books this month that had just such cool ideas that I'm feeling like I was so lucky to read so many great books. So in this one we follow Leora, who lives in a society where being a blank, not having any tattoos on your skin, is a really bad thing. In this world, every time you have a major life event or something really positive or negative happens in your life, it is inked upon your skin. And being inked is how you tell the society and other people around you who you are and that you matter. So Leora's father passes away and she's devastated. And when a person passes away in this society, their skin is made into a book. So yes, it's kind of gruesome, and the first time I read it, I was a little like, ugh. But then I got totally into it. I know it sounds weird, but they preserve the skin of your family member's body in a book so that forevermore you have every person's story that's written on their skin in a book form. And then the book is weighed and judged, and if the person is found to have led a good life, the family gets to keep the skin book, and that's how they keep their ancestors alive and their memory alive. If the person is found wanting or bad, then they burn the book, and that's really bad because that means the person will be forgotten. When Leora's father's skin book comes up for judgment, there is some question around the life that he led, and it leads Leora to question everything she's ever known about her society. So this book was a pretty slow burn. I was waiting for it to pick up, and then when it did, it was like boom, and I just didn't do anything else other than read this book. I finished this book at the base of Harry Potter world, right under the Hogwarts school castle, and I was just like, this is the best day ever! Yeah, it was great. It was so awesome. I'll also leave that link down below. I went to Harry Potter World in Osaka. It was awesome, so I'll leave that link down below as well. But back to the book. So Ink is great, and I really want to pick up the second one, but in June I'm only reading Japanese authors, so trying to anyway. So in July I will be picking up the second book in the Skin Books series. I cannot wait. I highly recommend it. I gave it 4 stars, and please read it so we can talk about it. I know that some people have talked about it, but I really love it. I'm also really interested in tattoos, and I have a lot of tattoos, so I think that's why I was so keen for this book, and I was like, yes, Leora, yes. So yeah, I'm just so interested in it, and I love it so much. So now it's the 4.5 books range. First, I want to talk about Akata Witch by Nnedi Okorafor. This is another book which, as soon as July comes, I'll be reading the second one, which is Akata Warrior, because it was so good. So in Akata Witch we follow an albino girl named Sunny who's living in kind of a Nigeria-inspired Africa, and she comes to find that she is not like other people. She's of the Jaguar people, and the Jaguar people have certain powers, and this book was so cool. Oh my god, everyone should read this book. It was amazing. Sunny sets out with some of her friends to try and take down someone called the Black Hat, who is taking children and using them for ritual sacrifice. I found this book just amazing, and I couldn't get over the imagination. I'm not sure how much of it is Nnedi Okorafor's imagination and how much of it is actual juju practice in current day. I am kind of ignorant about Nigeria, so I was so glad to soak up any knowledge that Nnedi Okorafor could give to me, and this book was amazing. 4.5 stars. Definitely recommend, and I will be reading the second one as soon as July comes. Alrighty, and the last book that I want to talk about, that it was also 4.5 stars, and I read it in one sitting, was Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo, which is the second book in Six of Crows, as I'm sure you know. So in this one we follow the same cast of characters as they set off to save someone who was kidnapped at the end of the first book, and basically the whole town is out for their blood, as are the people who they took something from, and I was here for the characters, and I give it 4.5 stars just because I loved seeing them again, and I loved the development that Leigh Bardugo put into each character. I feel like she did a really great job of actually rounding out most of the character arcs, and yeah, the ending was brutal. So both in a bad way, I definitely cried, and in a good way, I was like, yes, I'm so here for this ending. If you haven't read it, I really do recommend it. I'm a little sad because the first book I actually own, the beautiful hardback with the black edges. The second book I borrowed from my husband's school's library, so I have to give it back, but yeah. So that wraps up my May wrap up part 2. I read so many good I read so many good books this month. If you have read any of these or you want to read any of them, please let me know. I would love to chat with you guys in the comments. I hope you guys are having a most amazing, wonderful, beautiful day, and I will talk to you guys later. So toodles, bye!